Creating a helicopter at home is an ambitious project that requires a lot of knowledge, skill, and patience. It is not something that can be done overnight, and it requires a significant amount of planning and preparation before you even begin building. In this article, we will provide a step-by-step guide to creating a helicopter at home. We will cover everything from selecting the right materials and tools to designing the helicopter and assembling it. Before we begin, it is important to note that building a helicopter at home is a dangerous activity that should only be attempted by experienced engineers and aviation enthusiasts. If you do not have the necessary skills and expertise, we strongly advise against attempting to build a helicopter at home. Step 1. Planning and designing the helicopter. The first step in creating a helicopter at home is to plan and design the helicopter. This involves selecting the right materials, determining the size and shape of the helicopter, and designing the components. To begin, you will need to research different helicopter designs and select one that suits your needs and skill level. There are many different types of helicopters, including single-rotor helicopters, multi-rotor helicopters, and coaxial helicopters. Once you have selected a design, you will need to create a detailed plan and design the components of the helicopter. This includes the main rotor, tail rotor, transmission system, engine, and control systems. Step 2. Selecting the materials. After you have planned and designed the helicopter, the next step is to select the materials that you will need to build it. This includes selecting the right metals, composites, and plastics for each component of the helicopter. Some of the materials that you may need include aluminum, steel, carbon fiber, and fiberglass. You will also need to purchase the necessary tools, including drills, saws, welders, and other equipment. Step 3. Building the frame. The frame of the helicopter is the foundation of the entire aircraft, and it is essential that it is constructed with precision and accuracy. The frame is typically made from metal tubes that are welded together, and it provides the structure and support for the entire aircraft. To build the frame, you will need to cut and weld the metal tubes to the correct specifications. This requires a high degree of precision and accuracy, and it is important to take your time and ensure that the frame is constructed properly. Step 4. Installing the engine and transmission system. The engine and transmission system are critical components of the helicopter, and they must be installed with care and precision. The engine is typically located in the rear of the helicopter, and it provides the power to the main rotor and tail rotor. To install the engine and transmission system, you will need to mount the engine to the frame and connect it to the transmission system. This involves installing the clutch, gearbox, and other components that are necessary for the helicopter to function properly. Step 5. Installing the main rotor and tail rotor. The main rotor and tail rotor are the most visible components of the helicopter, and they are responsible for providing lift and stability. The main rotor is typically located at the top of the helicopter, and it is driven by the engine through the transmission system. The tail rotor is located at the rear of the helicopter, and it is responsible for providing stability and directional control. To install the main rotor and tail rotor, you will need to mount them to the frame and connect them to the engine and transmission system. Step 6. Installing the control systems, continued. To install the control systems, you will need to mount the flight controls to the cockpit and connect them to the engine and transmission system. This involves installing the hydraulic and electrical systems that are necessary for the controls to function properly. It is important to ensure that the control systems are calibrated and tested thoroughly before the helicopter takes flight. This can be done by performing ground tests and making any necessary adjustments to the controls. Step 7. Testing and fine-tuning the helicopter. Once the helicopter is fully assembled, it is important to perform a series of tests to ensure that it is safe and functional. This involves performing ground tests and test flights to fine-tune the helicopter's performance and ensure that it is stable and controllable. It is important to start with low-altitude flights and gradually increase the altitude and complexity of the flight maneuvers as you become more familiar with the helicopter's capabilities. It is also important to have a backup plan in case of an emergency, such as a helicopter crash. Step 8. Obtaining regulatory approval. Before you can legally fly a homemade helicopter, you must obtain regulatory approval from the relevant aviation authority in your country. This typically involves submitting your design and construction plans to the authority for review, as well as demonstrating that the helicopter meets all relevant safety standards and regulations. It is important to research the regulatory requirements in your country before you begin building a helicopter, as the requirements can vary significantly depending on the country and the type of helicopter you are building. Conclusion. Building a helicopter at home is an ambitious project that requires a significant amount of knowledge, skill, and patience. It is not something that can be done overnight, and it requires a significant amount of planning and preparation before you even begin building. If you have the necessary skills and expertise, building a helicopter can be a rewarding and fulfilling experience. However, it is important to approach the project with caution and to follow all relevant safety regulations and guidelines to ensure that the helicopter is safe and functional. Before you begin building a helicopter, it is important to research different helicopter designs, select the right materials and tools, and create a detailed plan and design for the helicopter. Once you have constructed the helicopter, you must perform a series of tests to ensure that it is safe and functional, and you must obtain regulatory approval before you can legally fly it. Certainly, here are some additional details that may be useful for anyone interested in building a helicopter at home. Selecting materials. When it comes to selecting materials for your homemade helicopter, it is important to choose materials that are lightweight, durable, and strong enough to withstand the stresses of flight. Common materials used in helicopter construction include aluminum alloys, titanium, composites, and carbon fiber. It is also important to choose the right type of fasteners and hardware for your helicopter. This includes bolts, nuts, washers, screws, and other components that will hold the various parts of the helicopter together. It is important to choose hardware that is corrosion resistant, as corrosion can weaken the structural integrity of the helicopter over time. Selecting the right tools. Building a helicopter at home requires a wide variety of specialized tools and equipment. Some of the tools you may need include a welding machine. This is necessary for joining metal components together. A lathe. This is used for machining parts and components. A drill press. This is used for drilling holes in metal and other materials. A band saw. This is used for cutting metal and other materials. A hydraulic press. This is used for pressing bearings and other components into place. A torque wrench. This is used for tightening bolts and other fasteners to the proper torque. It is important to invest in high-quality tools and equipment to ensure that your homemade helicopter is built to the highest standards of safety and reliability. Designing the helicopter. Before you begin building a helicopter, it is important to design the helicopter and create a detailed plan and blueprint. This involves choosing the right helicopter design for your needs, as well as determining the specifications for the engine, transmission system, rotor blades, and other components. There are many different helicopter designs to choose from, ranging from single-engine helicopters to multi-engine helicopters, and from small ultralight helicopters to larger commercial helicopters. It is important to choose a design that is appropriate for your skill level, experience, and budget. Once you have chosen a design, you will need to create a detailed plan and blueprint for the helicopter. This involves creating detailed drawings and schematics for each component of the helicopter, as well as creating a detailed list of materials and tools that you will need to build the helicopter. Building the cockpit. The cockpit is the heart of the helicopter, and it is where the pilot and passengers sit during flight. Building the cockpit involves constructing the frame and canopy of the cockpit, as well as installing the flight controls, instruments, and other components. It is important to ensure that the cockpit is designed to be comfortable and functional for the pilot and passengers, as well as safe and secure. This involves choosing the right materials for the cockpit frame and canopy, as well as ensuring that the flight controls are calibrated and tested thoroughly before the helicopter takes flight. Overall, building a helicopter at home is a complex and challenging project that requires a significant amount of knowledge, skill, and patience. However, with the right tools, materials, and design, it is possible to build a safe and functional helicopter that can provide many hours of enjoyment and satisfaction. Yes, here are some additional details that may be helpful for anyone interested in building a helicopter at home. Choosing the engine. The engine is one of the most important components of a helicopter, as it provides the power necessary to lift the helicopter off the ground and keep it in the air. When choosing an engine for your homemade helicopter, it is important to consider factors such as weight, power output, fuel efficiency, and reliability. There are many different types of engines that can be used in a helicopter, including 2-stroke and 4-stroke gasoline engines, diesel engines, and even electric motors. Each type of engine has its own pros and cons, and it is important to choose an engine that is appropriate for your skill level, experience, and budget. Installing the transmission system. The transmission system is another important component of a helicopter, as it transfers power from the engine to the rotor blades. The transmission system consists of a series of gears and shafts that transfer power from the engine to the main rotor and tail rotor. Installing the transmission system requires a significant amount of precision and attention to detail, as even small misalignments or mistakes can cause the helicopter to vibrate or become unstable in flight. It is important to follow the manufacturer's instructions carefully and to ensure that the transmission system is installed and calibrated correctly. Building the rotor blades. The rotor blades are perhaps the most complex and challenging part of building a helicopter at home. The rotor blades must be designed and built to exacting specifications in order to ensure that the helicopter is safe and stable in flight. There are many different types of rotor blades that can be used in a helicopter, including rigid blades, semi-rigid blades, and fully articulated blades. Each type of blade has its own advantages and disadvantages, and it is important to choose a blade that is appropriate for your helicopter design and intended use. Building the rotor blades typically involves constructing a core from a lightweight material such as foam or balsa wood, and then covering the core with a layer of fiberglass or carbon fiber. The blades must then be balanced and tested thoroughly to ensure that they are stable and capable of generating lift. In conclusion, building a helicopter at home is a challenging but rewarding project that requires a significant amount of knowledge, skill, and patience. It is important to do your research, choose the right materials and tools, and follow all relevant safety regulations and guidelines to ensure that your homemade helicopter is safe and functional. With the right approach and mindset, building a homemade helicopter can be an incredible achievement and a source of pride and satisfaction for years to come.